So this is what we're going to look at today, what I call a permaculture-infused approach to creating a communication strategy, because I think a lot of comm strategies focus on the economic bottom line, and like obviously being financially stable is hugely important. We all need to make a living. But I think as permaculturists or people who are ethically minded, we can, if we do business in a better way, we can help speed up the transition to regenerative business models that help our world. And I really love the triple bottom line accounting framework. So social, environmental, and financial, or people, planet, profit, as I have here. And I think if we start to weave that through our business, we can then weave it through our marketing as well, and of the way that we generate sales, or the way that we want to attract clients or customers. I guess, as permaculturists, we do understand what's going on with climate change. And I think every part of our business can become an opportunity to be part of a climate positive future, including our marketing. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do for you today. So first up, I just wanted to give you a bit of an insight into the two different types of communication planning that you can do as a small business owner. So first up is a communication strategy. So that's like, what are you going to do broadly in your business, the high level thinking? And it's ongoing. So it's things like, who are you going to talk to broadly every day, this year and next year? Which communication channels are you going to use? So those sort of broad puzzle pieces. And then the second part is a communications plan. Now, I know this feels a lot like semantics, but I feel like it is important to understand the difference here. So say you were thinking to launch a particular product, like you were going out with a product in 2 months. Your communications plan would tell you exactly how you were going to market that. That would say, I'm going to post X on, this thing on Facebook on Friday. I'm going to send an email to someone the following week. It really gets into that, step-by-step ground level execution. And I guess if you think about it from a permaculture perspective, this totally makes sense, right? It's just designing from patterns to details. Like the communication strategy is the pattern and the communication plan is the detail. So, that doesn't need to be too overwhelming. However, because you probably are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, let's just focus on the communication strategy for now. This is the one that's most important when you're starting out. It's what's going to help you get really consistent and aligned messaging. And that's the kind of thing that really starts to resonate with your customers. So they start to remember who you are and what you're doing. And then in the future, if you want to, you can start to create, specific plans around specific campaigns. But either way, even if you don't want to do that, you still have this broad level strategy that can kind of pull all the puzzle pieces together and help you communicate really effectively. So that said, let's dive a little more deeply into what is actually inside a communication strategy. So I kind of made this little list here. I think it's like the 6 steps to a communication strategy. And it probably does feel like a lot when you look at this list and you think about the work that goes into it. But I guess from doing a few of these with different people, you can actually potentially wrap this all up into just a 2 or 3 page document. You don't need to write like War and Peace on this. And you can sort of pop together a first draft in, maybe a morning or something, set aside one solid morning and can get this done. So it doesn't, even though you are trying to cover off a lot of things, it doesn't need to be something that takes you weeks. In a larger business, they do a lot more than this. They might do like SWOT analysis and team delegation matrices and, reporting structures and things like that. But you don't really need any of that in a small business situation. You really just want to know what your goals are, what your message is, who you're saying it to, which platforms you're going to say it on, and how you'll know if all of those things are working. So that's kind of what I've got here: marketing goals, key messages and selling points, target audience, marketing budget, communication channels, and your success metrics and milestones. So that's kind of what we're going to work through now. We're going to literally go through each of these 6 steps and I'll break them down for you so you can understand what kinds of things you'd include in each of those. So I guess starting with the first step, what are your marketing goals? So this is pretty broad. It's like, what's the purpose of investing time or money into communication activities? And it usually comes down to one of 3 things: brand awareness, so getting more people to know about you; customer engagement, so more interaction with your brand; or sales, boosting sales. And sometimes it's all 3. And that's totally fine if it is all 3. I think it's really important when you're thinking of those types of marketing goals to use SMART goals, which you've probably all heard of before, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And I'll give you an example of these in a moment. But I also just wanted to mention that I think when we're looking at a permaculture-infused approach to a communication strategy, this is a really good opportunity to consider your why. Like, beyond just, I want to make money. Like, why do you actually want to achieve that goal? What's the ethical reason, or the world-changing reason, or the planet-positive reason that you want to achieve this goal? So again, we're thinking about that triple bottom line, the people, planet, profit. So I guess some examples, because that often makes it easier to understand. For my business, my overall goal is make X amount of dollars per year so that I can support myself and the lifestyle that I want to live from my business. But my deep why, the ethical reason that sits underneath this, is that I've read something like 7 out of 10 people will live in cities by 2050, and the way we presently live in cities is completely unsustainable. And I want to be part of the movement to help people upskill so that a regenerative future is possible for everyone. So they're the types of businesses that I choose to work with and the workshops that I take part in. I guess another example is a farm that I worked with. So their SMART goal was that they wanted to increase their weekly veggie box sales from 100 boxes a week to 150 boxes a week, or 150 customers. So that's really specific, right? Specific, measurable, time-bound. But the deep why beneath that was that they wanted to provide more families with healthy, fresh, organic food. They wanted to provide an alternative to the supermarket duopoly. And they wanted to be part of building a sustainable local food system for South Australia. So you can sort of see, you can step a little bit beyond just the money or finance-based goals and add a bit more depth there, which kind of makes you feel a bit more comfortable to chase those goals too, I think. So if we think about step 2 then, so you know what you're trying to achieve. Now it's kind of like, how are you going to communicate that? Key message statements, they're one of the places where I see most small businesses fall over or not quite get right. But it's actually crucial. So this is kind of like just 4 to 5 short, sharp statements, 1 sentence if you can, or 2 max, that communicate what you actually offer and the most important aspects of what you offer. And all of this is about consistency. So wherever you're communicating, you kind of have the same feel and style, and you're communicating the same aspects of your brand to people. So I like these key messages to become a reference document that I refer to over and over again. Like if I'm working on a client's communication and they have key messaging document, I'll often keep it open on my computer while I'm working. And maybe I'll write, say, a social media post, and then I'll look at their key messages and think, oh, is there one of those I can weave into that social media post just naturally, like a nice touch, or an email, or I don't know, maybe some website copy. So you're starting to pull these messages out and giving them touch points across all of your communications. I'll give you some examples of these in a moment. This is also a really good moment to get clear on your unique selling point. So this is like something that's really distinctive about you that maybe your competitors aren't doing. So I guess for me, for my business, there's thousands, millions maybe of digital marketers out there. My unique selling point is that I'm adding a permaculture perspective or a permaculture-infused approach. There's not many people doing that at the moment. If you think about Morag's Permaculture Educators Program, there's lots of places you can study a PDC, a Permaculture Design Certificate, or a Permaculture Teacher Certificate, but her Educators Program is the only place you can do both of those online at the same time. That's a unique selling point. So hopefully you kind of understand the difference. The key message is, what do we do? What are we offering? What's important about our business? And the unique selling point is, what's different though? What are we doing that no one else is kind of doing? What are we capturing? And I wanted to mention to you this marketing rule of 7, where they say it takes an average of 7 interactions with your brand before someone's likely to make an action or take an action or make a purchase. If you sat in on the branding workshop, you'll remember we talked about the importance of brand colors and fonts, that cohesive visual look. When we're talking about key messages and unique selling points, where it's about the cohesive communications message, the way it sounds and is written. And that's all really important so that people realize they're interacting with you. Like there's lots of people out there. There's lots of brands on social media all doing quite similar things, if you can have a really clear brand identity with the way that you speak and the colors and fonts that you use, people start to remember, okay, that's Koren. So that becomes a touch point that people start to remember your brand. So it is a noisy world out there, but being consistent in the way you communicate is one of the ways that you can cut through. And actually, in terms of this 7 interactions, I think it's more like 20 now. And I read a report a few months ago that said it was more like 34 because we're just bombarded by so many messages. That's not to overwhelm you. It's more just to say that consistency really is so crucial, because that's how you get people to remember who you are and what it is that you're specifically offering rather than, your competitor next door. So this is an example. This text is probably a bit too small to read, but I kind of just wanted to demonstrate that this can just be a 1-page document, your key messages and unique selling point. So I'll just kind of point out a few things here. This is that organic farm that I was talking about earlier. They're here in South Australia. So, their key messages, they talk about the fact that they grow their vegetables themselves here in South Australia. They're young farmers. They're passionate about regenerative agriculture. They grow veggies using organic practices and permaculture principles. And by shopping with them, you're directly supporting local farmers. So they're like 4 things that they're doing that are, really clean and clear. But then their unique selling point is that they harvest by hand and deliver to your kitchen within 24 hours. So they literally pick and then the next day it arrives to you. So all of the key messages, they're things that they're doing, but that there might be other farmers in South Australia who are doing similar things. It's still really important for people to know that you're buying direct from the farmer, that it's organic, et cetera, et cetera. But then that unique selling point of, well, it's in your kitchen within 24 hours. No one else is doing that. So you can start to kind of use those messages across all of your comms. Like if you're writing a social media post about harvest, you might add in a little line that says something about can't wait for this to be in our not these words, but like can't wait for this to be in our customers' kitchens tomorrow or something. That might be a way that you start to work a unique selling point or a key message into your comms. So this isn't like a dead document that you write and then you forget about. It's one that you keep in front of you and start to use as often as you can. All right, so step 3, we're halfway through. Good job, hang in there. So this one, identifying your key audience or your target audience, is another one where I find a lot of people trip up. But I think it's really important. So I've got a few slides on this just to help you really understand what we're trying to get at here. If you've ever looked at, what is marketing, you would have seen these target audience exercises before. So it's nothing new here. You're just thinking about like, who are your ideal customers and clients? What are they? How old are they? What gender are they? Where do they live? What do they do for work? Are they near to you? What kind of values and interests do they have? So just understanding who they are as people. And this can be something that you write out in a sentence. You can even give them a name if you like Sally is a 45-year-old woman from Melbourne who is worried about the impact of chemicals on her health or something like that. That might be a way to sort of sum up one of your ideal target audiences. And then the second thing you want to think about is, what's a challenge in your life that you can help solve? And you need to kind of do this quite sensitively. There's been a lot of, in the past, they call it pain point marketing, where you sort of figure out what's a problem that someone has, and then you go to town in your copy on that problem. And that's, not ideal in terms of like potentially triggering people. Like it does create an action, but maybe in a slightly unethical way. But it is important to know what their needs or problems are and what the thing you're providing might solve that problem for them, because then you can communicate that way, even in a softer way. You might communicate the solution rather than the problem, or gently touch on the problem and talk about the solution. They're the sort of the 2 things. Who is this person? What are they like in their life? And then what's the issue that they have that you're able to solve? I'd love to share this another marketing rule with you. When you market to everyone, you appeal to no one. And I really want to kind of like hammer that one home, because I really do see so many people struggle with this concept of niching down. And they think, if I target someone too aggressively, for lack of a better word, I'll lose customers. But actually what happens when your message becomes too general is that it doesn't resonate with anyone. So anyone landing on there is just like, pass, or lukewarm response kind of thing. Whereas if you figure out your target audience and you start talking to them specifically, you kind of end up with this core group of like true fans, and they arrive at your website or your social media or wherever it may be, and their instant response is like, yes, this is for me, and they just know, yeah, that's what I want, or that's what I need. And then you'll get all these periphery people around those sort of true fans who'll think, yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. And so by kind of having a clear niche, you can kind of, you'll actually appeal to more people than if you don't appeal to anyone. Having said that, this can be something that you develop over time. It can be really tricky when you're first starting off to know who your target market is, which brings me to my next slide. How on earth do you identify your target market? So again, this is something you could spend weeks on, and I definitely don't recommend you do. Maybe use time blocking and say, I'm going to look into this for an hour or 2 hours max, and just see what you can find. But here are some really simple ways to look at who might be in your target audience. So looking at your existing customers is always a good idea. Look for common characteristics and interests that you might be able to roll up into a target audience. I also really like doing surveys of previous clients. You can kind of do these for free on programs like Jotform, and just ask questions to get some information about their preferences and needs and buying behavior. So that's fairly quick and easy to do. But even quicker and easier, your social media insights. Like if you have a look in Instagram and Facebook, for example, there's often heaps of demographic information like the age, the gender, the cities, all of that sort of stuff's really easy to get. Your website analytics can be good too if you're using something like Google Analytics. That can be really helpful. And I think also Squarespace and WordPress also do have quite a lot of website analytics in the background. Again, the demographic information. How old are these people who are visiting your site? Where are they living? All of those kinds of things. And you can look at your competitors too, if you like who are they targeting and what sorts of people are resonating with them. And then you can choose, all right, I'll go for someone different, or maybe I'll go for someone the same. But actually for me, the last one there, the sixth one, is I think really important, maybe the most important for me. And one that gets forgotten, I think, is like, who do you actually really love working with as well? Like, where's that intersection of people who need what you are offering, but people that you love to work with? And if you think about an example from my business, I really like to work asynchronously, where I kind of have these big blocks of focus time and I do the work, and I'm not, collaboratively editing in a document or anything like that. And then I send it over to the client for review and give them this beautiful space of a week to think and not be rushed, and then come back to me with their revisions. So I know that if my client, the potential client, is someone who likes to do like lots of deep collaboration, like jump on a call and flesh it out, we're probably not going to be a great fit for working together, because my brain doesn't work its best like that. So that's cool. I can kind of just work that up into my ideal audience and bear that in mind. So yeah, think about what you like and the types of characteristics of people you like working with. All right, step 4. Thinking about your marketing budget. Now, like a lot of people at this point would talk about money, and that's awesome. Obviously, it's really important to know if you have any money for spending on marketing. If you don't, it doesn't really matter. Like, that's okay. You can do heaps without money. But yeah, I guess if you're thinking about your marketing budget, do have a look at whether you have any money to put into paid ads and that sort of thing. But the thing I'd really encourage you to think about is your time and energy budget as well. I really feel like that this gets overlooked a lot. And I see lots of small ethical business owners kind of running ragged, trying to do absolutely everything, and, just maybe hitting burnout or something like that. So I think it's, I think that this is an act of people care. One of the permaculture ethics is people care, a way that we can care for ourselves by being honest about the amount of time and energy that we actually have to sustainably dedicate to marketing, or maybe staff if you have them. As an example, for me, I dedicate 2 hours per week, or schedule 2 hours per week for Instagram. But my community is actually really active, and I get a heap of DMs and lots of comments. And so I only have time to post once a week, because the rest of that time is taken up with community management. But that's kind of a time budgeting thing where I've gone, all right, well, I don't want to not reply to people, So I'm going to post less. I'm not going to go over my time budget. I'm not going to suddenly start using all this extra time and energy that I don't have on this marketing channel. I'm going to just do what I can in the allocated time, and for me, energy and budget as well, because I do find social media quite draining. And working it out on a weekly basis is really, really great too. You can block it out in your calendar. So that's important to figure out, because step 5 is working out your communication channels. So again, hopefully this font isn't too small, but I've kind of just mind dumped here the menu of options that are available, I think, to a small business owner. So, you know, your website presence and doing some SEO work, all the various social media options we have, email marketing and newsletters, blogging and podcasts and webinars. Then you've got like your paid digital advertising, Facebook and Instagram, Google, that kind of thing. Maybe your maybe physical things would work for you, maybe like a flyer drop in your local area if you're a local service provider. You might even get into media, public relations, that sort of thing, events and networking. Like there's a smorgasbord of things that are available. But I'd like to remind you, you don't need to do all of these. You definitely don't need to do all of these. And in fact, thinking about the time budget and energy budget, it's probably better to pick 2 or 3 channels and do them really, really well than think you have to be on everything and spread yourself thin across, you know, I've put 6 there, but I've seen some small business owners across 16. It's just like, you're not going to be able to stay on top of that. So I guess when it comes to selecting, there's 2 things to consider. One is, where is your ideal audience most likely to hang out? Like if you have a product that's aimed at like 40-plus-year-old women, probably Facebook is a better option for you than TikTok. I mean, that's just the demographic of that platform. But the second thing to consider is, where do you like to be yourself? Like, what do you actually like to be on, and what do you enjoy creating? And I just pulled together this little marketing channel combinations, because I hear a lot of clients say, I hate social media, but I know I need to be on it, or I hate longer form writing, but I know I need a blog. And I'm always like, no, you don't actually need to if you don't want to. If you don't like social media, you're probably not going to do it very well. It's going to be like a begrudging kind of thing for you. So if that's your kettle of fish, or maybe your time budget is small, so you don't actually have a lot of time for marketing, you can think of just picking a couple channels like this and creating marketing channel combinations. So for example, website SEO or search engine optimization and Google Ads are a really good combination. That's where you might, you know, deep dive into how to optimize your website for search, or get a paid SEO expert to help you, so that your site does really well in organic search results and you get a whole heap of people coming to your site just from Googling. And then you might augment that with a little bit of paid Google Ads advertising to help keep that traffic coming through to you. And that might be your marketing, that might be your channel. Or you might love social media and you're just like, I can post every day, and you've got this thriving community. Well, awesome. If you have some budget and you start doing paid social media, so like Facebook and Instagram ads, they're going to go really well, because, you know, if you've got a solid organic social media engagement rate, that really, really positively influences your paid social media rate. Or, you know, if you're a blogger, or you've got a podcast, email marketing might be the one for you. Like, people love receiving an email for something they've subscribed to. That's free. And, you know, you might use your blog or your podcast to promote whatever you're offering, and then punch that out via email marketing. So you can kind of like pick a pair, I guess, if you want to. And yeah, hopefully I've just made that really clear, that you definitely don't need to do everything. We don't need to run ourselves ragged and listen to, you know, all of the marketers that are like, if you're not doing this, you're foolish. I think it can tune in a little bit more to what we like and what works for us, and then strategically pick kind of channel combinations that work well together. And the other thing I wanted to say on this is, like, I think we need to try as much as possible to embrace those permaculture ethics of people care and earth care in our communication. And I've just given a few basic examples here, like, is your branding accessible for people with colour blindness and vision impairment? So we went through how to check that in the branding workshop. So if you're along for that one, you'll know, or you can refer back. And then, we're taking a trauma-informed approach to customer pain points. That's kind of that thing I was getting at earlier, that it can be triggering if you aggressively hammer home, someone's pain point. We can do that in a much more solutions-based, softer way. The digital carbon footprint of your website, things like how you use video and images, or the hosting provider that you choose, they can all have a really big impact. Again, we talked about that in the website workshop. And then if you are doing, printed collateral, are they compostable after use? Are the inks and papers sustainable? Like those kinds of things. I feel like this is kind of right down the bottom of the priority list for a lot of people when they're marketing, but we can bump it up a little bit. It doesn't take too much more thinking, and it just kind of helps to weave those ethics and that triple bottom line approach through our whole business, I think. All right, so now we're down to the very last step, which is another frightening slide full of information. But I guess I wanted to, again, give you a menu of things that you might be able to consider when you're thinking about how you'll determine the success of your communications campaign, because that's important, right? If you're starting to think about the way you communicate and you're doing all this work around key messages and going after a specific niche audience, you do actually want to know if it's working or not, and have some metrics, some signposts that tell you if you're heading in the right direction. So these are a bunch of the different ones that you could choose from, and it's good to track them monthly or quarterly. Yearly is probably a bit too far apart. Personally, I do quarterly because the month just rolls around too fast and it's like, oh God, I don't have time to do that again yet. It's really up to you, but you might choose these depending on what your original goal was at the beginning of the plan. So, if you're really like, we need to boost our sales, it's crucial that we sell more, then the conversion rate would be a key metric that you'd want to look at. Like, how many people did actually buy? Is that going up or down? Especially if you're running ads. But lead generation is a good one too. If you're an email marketer and you're wanting to use your email list to help your brand, you might want to track how many people are joining each month or quarter, how many people are downloading your free guide, that kind of thing. Website traffic is a really great metric if you're honing in on search engine optimization and Google Ads, like how many people are actually visiting and what are they doing? Are they staying for, 2 or 3 minutes or more, which is a good indicator of site health, or are they leaving, immediately or after 30 seconds or a minute? And then, if you're sending emails, what's happening with those emails? Like, are people actually opening them? Are they reading them? Are they clicking through? So they're all metrics that are in most email providers that you can look at. Social media growth and engagement, I think, is a metric that we need to take with a pinch of salt, unless one of your brand goals is brand awareness. Because often that's what organic social media serves at. It's not necessarily the point where the sale happens. It's more the point where people connect with you and get to know you and trust you and really like you. Those 7 touch points we talked about earlier are quite easy to make happen on social media. So if you are using social media growth as your key metric, definitely include engagement as well. And if you just Google like how to measure social media engagement, there's a few really good tools online where you just like chuck your handle in and they just punch out a number for you, which you could track in a spreadsheet, every quarter or something like that. But I'd probably pair that with another metric that's a bit more dollars focused, just to make sure you're not getting what's called a vanity metric, where you're like, oh, great, I'm so successful, but you've got no sales coming in the door. And then if you are doing paid advertising, there's this acronym ROAS, return on ad spend. And a lot of if you look in Meta's backend, it's actually just a column that you can pull up. And that just tells you like how much revenue you've earned for every dollar. So that means you can scale. If you're like, okay, for every dollar I spend, I get $3 in sales. You know that if you spend $100, you're going to get $300 back or something like that. So they can be really good metrics to track. And then obviously return on investment, just a standard kind of financial metric. I guess to give you an example, and I'm keeping going with this farm because it's they've got such a great comms strategy. So it's a really easy one for me. In terms of what we do with their success metrics is we look at how many boxes are being sold each week. Obvious metric, because that was the goal, right, at the beginning of their strategy. We also look at how many of those people are new versus returning customers. You might have heard of the concept of churn in marketing, and that's like how many people are leaving your organization, your business, and aren't continuing to purchase from you. So it's a really interesting one to look at, because that tells you whether people are happy, satisfied, liking your product, believing in what you do. If you've got, if this farm was hitting the 150 boxes a week that they wanted, but half of them were new customers each week, that would be a sign that something wasn't right. And then for that farm, we also track they have a very small spend Facebook ads campaign. I think it's something like $150 a month or $200 a month or something. So we just track the number of conversions, like how many people clicked on a Facebook ad and signed up for their free, I think it's like a 10% off voucher or something like that, and the cost per conversion. And that's just literally in a free spreadsheet. And we just look at the numbers each month and look at whether they're going up and down, and then we can make decisions, or like, oh, maybe we need to tweak that or change that. Pick one or two that work for you that make the most sense for what you're doing. But I really do think it is important to track that, because that's how you start to see the pattern of whether things are working or not. And I think often we forget that point because we think, oh no, I can tell, or I've got a gut feel or something, and that's really good. Gut feels are great, but the data is helpful to know, what's happening in the real world as well. I just wanted to summarize, I guess, what we've kind of gone through here. If you're thinking about a communication strategy for your small business, this is kind of what you want to include. So like what you want to achieve in your business and your deep why, what your key messages are, like who you're talking to and which platforms you're using, that time and energy, as well as monetary budget, like how much can you be honest about how much time you actually have for this, and then which key metrics are you going to track to try and understand. So that kind of gives you like a broad brushstroke document. And if you're doing monthly or quarterly tracking, I think that would be a good opportunity each time to open the communication strategy and have a bit of a read back through it and maybe tweak it. If things need updating, you might even, keep your metric tracking, your data tracking in the same document, so you're forced to open it. Because I think the thinking that goes into these types of strategies is really, can be really transformational for a small business, but only if you then apply it. And, we talked earlier about a communications plan that like detailed, I'm going to do this on Friday, this on Saturday in order to launch a product. So that can, help inform a communication strategy. You don't actually need that. You could go on with your business as it is, and just knowing, all right, these are my key messages, I'm going to weave them in. Or perhaps if you were like, okay, I need to launch a product and I need help, I want to call in a marketer. If you handed them your communication strategy, you're giving them like a massive head start, and you could say to them, can you please come back to me with a 3-month communications plan on what you're going to do when, and they would have this beautiful strategy that outlines like what you're doing and why, and what your platforms are. So you'll just get better value out of paying for help as well if you ever need to. So little homework challenge for you. I guess to try and really underscore that this doesn't have to take a million years and be War and Peace, I thought I would set that as your homework challenge, drafting your own communication strategy, including those 6 points that we've gone through, your goals, your key messages, target audience, marketing budget, communications channels, and success metrics and milestones. Because I think this would be a really good chance to just have a quick go and see what you can come up with.